First, he warned about political tyranny. Now he's slamming Twitter tirades.
One of the dangers of the internet is that people can have entirely different realities.
After Barry met Harry, former Obama surrogates joined the attacks tonight on President Trump.
There clearly is a message there for the president.
So what happened to the White House tradition of not disparaging your successor? Whoops. Then, after apocalyptic warnings about the Trump tax cut,
this is Armageddon.
The left abruptly shifting its tune after voting no, no, no.
Next year, 91% of middle-income Americans will receive a tax cut. Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, it is a very good thing.
Are Democrats suddenly getting worried that tax cuts will actually be popular and help the economy? And will they now vote to make them permanent? A close aide to Hillary Clinton weighs in live. Plus, a Republican lawmaker calls for a purge at the FBI, but now seems to be backtracking. We'll get live reaction from Congressman Matt Gaetz. And Melania Trump's Christmas tweet gets trolled. Why are Democrats constantly ripping into her? Andy Oak literally wrote the book on First Ladies. He'll give us the inside scoop. Good evening and welcome again to Fox News at Night. I'm Ed Henry in Washington, in for Shannon Bream all week. New tonight, in an unfolding controversy involving President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump, David Axelrod, the longtime Obama advisor, says tonight the former president did indeed take a shot at President Trump during an interview with Britain's Prince Harry, despite not naming the current president directly in that sit-down. And what's more, Axelrod is accusing the current commander-in-chief of using social media to, quote, divide the American community, part of a plague on the entire conversation on the internet, unquote. The attacks mirror those from his former boss, Barack Obama, who seems to be breaking a recent tradition of former presidents not eviscerating their successors. Our correspondent Lauren Blanchard joins us live tonight to lay out the firestorm that's playing out. Good to see you, Lauren.
Hey, Ed. Well, in that friendly interview, former President Obama said how people interact on social media today could splinter society, especially when used by leaders to divide, in a not-so-subtle reference to the current commander-in-chief's famous Twitter use.
One of the dangers of the internet is that people can have entirely different realities. They can be just cocooned in information that reinforces their current biases.
He's certainly not the only one. He is the most powerful one right now, but this is something that plagues the entire conversation on the internet, and this is something President Obama has been concerned about for a long time.
And the president doesn't seem likely to close his Twitter app anytime soon, waving this "keep on tweeting" sign when he landed in Florida for the Christmas holiday, despite the many politicians and pundits who have called on the president to stop. And there is an unwritten rule that former presidents typically do not publicly speak ill of their successors. While former President Obama did not specifically call out President Trump's Twitter use, it's not the first time Mr. Obama has stirred controversy for his veiled jabs. At an event in Chicago earlier this month, President Obama raised eyebrows while talking about the need to protect American freedoms like the press, a regular target of President Trump's frustration. Mr. Obama suggesting the U.S. could go the way of Germany in the 1930s if citizens grew complacent, saying we have to tend to this garden of democracy or else things could fall apart quickly. And there's also the question of whether the Obamas, who are close to Prince Harry, will get an invitation to the big royal wedding in May, and if President Trump will be snubbed by the royal couple. British tabloids report some government officials worry not inviting the current president could strain U.S.-UK relations, but the prince says the guest list is still up in the air. Ed?
I suspect after that interview, President Trump may not want an invite. Lauren Blanchard, thanks for giving us all the information. With President Trump tearing apart his predecessor's legacy, one government regulation at a time, it's probably not surprising they have real sharp policy differences. But complaining about tweets? Let's dig a little deeper with Fox News contributor, senior editor at The Federalist, Molly Hemingway, and senior politics writer for U.S. News and World Report, David Cantonese. I appreciate you both coming in. David, I want to start with you because on one hand, there is this recent tradition, George W. Bush in particular made it clear, I'm getting off the stage. I'm not going to attack Barack Obama once he comes to office, even though we have sharp differences. But you go back in history, Eisenhower, Truman, these two went after each other. There have been many examples. But why won't Barack Obama just leave the stage?
Well, look, I think first we have to be careful. He never even mentions Donald Trump. He's been very sparing in his criticism.
But David Axelrod made it clear.
I think we all know what he's talking about. But
So
I would
why
say
not
he
deliver the punch?
is breaking precedent because Trump is breaking precedent and how he is acting. No one, I mean, President Trump acting on social media is different than what we've ever seen. Criticizing the FBI director, criticizing his own attorney general, criticizing Hillary Clinton constantly with caustic attacks. So I think, nicknames, everybody's, up for grabs for this guy. So I think President Obama feels a responsibility to weigh in, but he's doing it very sparingly. He's not going to the level that President Trump is. So maybe then
President Trump is fair game as well. David makes a fair point. But if you're Barack Obama and you want to deliver a punch, why not just say it? Why are you playing these games and saying the 1930s in Germany? He's basically comparing this president to Hitler, to the Nazis.
I think the thing that basically differentiates Barack Obama from Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is more aggressive, whereas Barack Obama is passive-aggressive. And so he doesn't name him, but everybody knows he's talking about him. When he had policy differences with Republicans over immigration, he said that Republicans were scared of widows and 3-year-old orphans. He's fond of attacking. He just did it in a more passive-aggressive fashion, and people are not familiar with this more direct, straight-on, insulting fashion. They both could stand to improve their insult game.
Are there a couple of other things going on? First, David, I talked to Democratic insiders who say they think that Barack Obama is one of the only senior Democrats who can get inside this president's head. And that's partly what's going on. He doesn't care what Schumer says, Pelosi, Chuck and Nancy dismiss. But when Barack Obama speaks, this president listens.
Possibly, but I think, to Molly's point, he's got such a different demeanor and his approach. Is the softer touch the way to get into Donald Trump's head? I mean, usually what we saw through the campaign is if you strike back at Trump, he hits back twice as hard.
He responds to a real punch, not to a wimpy punch.
Well, and Obama's just never going to go there. He never had that temperament. He's not going to use the rhetoric that Donald Trump has. But I think if you talk to Republicans, I did over the last week doing my Trump end of year story, they want him to stop tweeting. They think, John Kelly, his chief of staff, wants him to do less tweeting. The people supportive of him want him to tweet less.
This is his way. He says it again and again, and he's right on this point. This is how he gets around the mainstream media, unfiltered. And Molly, I want to ask you, as much as the Democrats dismiss the tweeting, for the former president, he could have gone after the tax cut. He could have gone on and on about literally dozens of Trump policies. Does this suggest that maybe the tweeting gets to the Democrats more than they want to admit?
Well, also, he's not going after all of the policy accomplishments because it's a rebuttal of what the previous 8 years
tearing apart the Obama legacy.
You can go after tweets because generally people do say, oh, I don't like the way he tweets, even if they actually kind of do enjoy it and they enjoy following him and they react to everything he says. But you can't go after this strong record of tearing down all the buildup and regulations, the Supreme Court appointment, the huge success of the tax cut at the end of the year, the defeating ISIS, and
that Obama couldn't do. He called ISIS the JV squad.
Yeah, so instead of going after policy stuff, you go after the rhetoric because it's an easy hit.
So real quick, maybe does this suggest that even Barack Obama knows that Trump is succeeding more than Democrats want to admit?
I think everyone is having that end-of-year realization that as they spent the whole year mocking his Twitter, he actually had a very successful year.
He's had more success on policy, but he's losing public opinion. This is still a president at 37% approval rating, one of the lowest in history.
Fair point, but when Bernie Sanders is even saying, hey, the tax cut's not so bad.
It is, but it's not popular.
Maybe it's going to get more popular.
That's the big question.
Appreciate you both coming in.
Sure thing.
Meanwhile, lawyers for President Trump keep saying they expect the Russia probe to wind up soon, at least the parts involving the president. But Robert Mueller may have other ideas, with a new report suggesting the special counsel may be widening his probe by now going after the Trump campaign's digital team. That as questions continue to mount about perceived bias at the Justice Department and the FBI, clouding these various investigations so much that one Republican lawmaker suggested this week there should be a purge of those law enforcement agencies.
I would like to see the directors of those agencies purge it and say, look, we've got a lot of great agents, a lot of great lawyers here. Those are the people that I want the American people to see and know the good work's being done, not these people who are kind of the deep state.
Now, in response, Ohio Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan issued a statement saying Republican calls to undermine these most basic pillars of our democracy are not normal. They aren't just politics. They are downright un-American. Being able to independently investigate our own government, free from political influence, is what makes our nation great, and it's what sets us apart from the rest of the world. For more, let's bring in Matt Gaetz. He's a Republican congressman from Florida. Good to see you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year almost, sir.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well, Ed.
Congressman, do we need to see a purge at the FBI?
Well, let me start by saying that Tim Ryan doesn't have the right to shine Francis Rooney's shoes. Ambassador Rooney has worked overseas on behalf of the United States of America and knows full well the good work that far too many, or a great deal of folks are doing at the FBI and Department of Justice. The problem is in the swamp of Washington, D.C., the biggest alligator is a politicized FBI and Department of Justice. And that's why we're fighting hard to make sure that we've got a fair and equal opportunity for all sides to be heard, and that you don't have this pro-Hillary Clinton bias, anti-Donald Trump bias, continue to infect our institutions and our systems that all Americans should be able to rely on.
I hear you defending Congressman Rooney, but do you agree with him? You're upset about the FBI and what's going on, but should there be a purge?
Well, the purge is happening. We just saw Andrew McCabe announce his retirement recently. You saw Bruce Orr, who was at the Department of Justice, demoted, and you saw Peter Strzok, the person who sent these horrible anti-Trump text messages, the same Peter Strzok who was very involved in the exoneration statement for Hillary Clinton and then got drafted into the Mueller probe. He's also been demoted and reassigned. And so time and again, you see the senior leadership at these agencies exposed for their bias, and that shouldn't in any way impair the good work that folks on the ground are doing each and every day to protect the country.
Congressman, that's your view of the FBI. You just mentioned Robert Mueller. I did as well a moment ago. Yahoo News has a new report out. Here's what they say about the Mueller probe. Quote, in just the last few weeks, his prosecutors have begun questioning Republican National Committee staffers about the party digital operation that worked with the Trump campaign to target voters in key swing states. They're seeking to determine if the joint effort was related to the activities of Russian trolls and bots aimed at influencing the American electorate, according to two sources. So, bottom line, what does that tell you about the Mueller probe? Are they going after Jared Kushner, for example, the president's son-in-law, who helped run that digital operation?
Well, here's what we know. The DNC and Hillary Clinton were paying people to go and pay Russians to tell lies about the president. And I guess the best evidence of collusion against Republicans is that Republicans and Russia were all on the same internet at the same time. It's ludicrous. Why are we not investigating the real crimes of the real criminals? Why aren't we investigating why the DNC's activities with the Fusion GPS company that was employing Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie Orr? That's the real collusion, and it's just outrageous to see this biased Mueller probe continue. I mean, if Bob Mueller were any more biased, we'd have to give him credentials for the mainstream media.
So are you calling for Robert Mueller to be fired when you say he's biased?
Yeah. Absolutely. I've been calling for Mueller to be fired for months now, and over 20 members of the House Judiciary Committee have been calling for a second special counsel to investigate the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton, because there very well may be circumstances where the consequence of those bribes may be undermining American security moving forward. That's why we've got to get to the bottom of it, and we've got to end
I've just got 30
distraction
seconds
in the Trump presidency.
Let me unpack that, though. There have been some Republicans even saying if what happens is what you want, and the president fires Robert Mueller, we're going to have a constitutional crisis. You're okay with that?
No, the Attorney General should fire him. No, the president shouldn't have to fire him.
The Attorney General recused himself. The Attorney General recused himself. He's not involved.
Yeah, but that's the problem. We've got an Attorney General who's a spectator rather than the leader of the Department of Justice, and that undermines our democracy. There's no legal requirement for him to have recused himself in this matter. He needs to step up, be the Attorney General, fire Mueller, and appoint a second special counsel to evaluate the Clinton Foundation.
Strong words from the congressman. I suspect you might be fired up in part because of the Independence Bowl. I'm contractually obligated by Shannon Bream, my colleague, who has Florida State ties, as do you. Florida State 42, Southern Miss 13. Looks like you had a big bowl victory. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Go Noles, and I know Shannon was watching and cheering for him.
She was. She'll be back next week. Happy New Year, sir.